Welcome to this clip on non-cooperative game theory. My name is Leon Hermans and in this clip I will show you how to construct and analyze a game tree. In this clip we will use the example of the dam just upstream of a beautiful estuary and coastal village, whereby the dam reservoir serves a nearby city but negatively affects river flows to the downstream estuary and increases flood risks for the coastal village. The same case as we have seen in the previous clip in this series. We follow the steps as outlined in the textbook in chapter 6, called Appraising the Strategic Value of Information, Extensive Games. The first steps in this process are well supported by making an options table and conflict graph, as shown in the previous clip. For this case, we develop the options table shown here on the slide. The next step is to review the order of play. Which player is first to decide and announce its move? Sometimes this is clear, in other cases you may want to explore different versions of the game to see if the order of play matters for the outcome. We start with assuming that the city of Mossel Bay moves first, and that the Department of Water Affairs moves next, and the village of Great Brock then responds as last player in the game. You may also recall that we had looked at the values and preferences of players for the possible outcomes of the game. We compared for each pair of outcomes which one would be more preferred by a player. The result is a preferred order of outcomes with the most preferred outcomes first and the least preferred or worst outcomes as the last ones in the list. For a game tree, we then need to transfer those ordinal preferences into numeric payoff values. This can be done in various ways. One way could be to assume an equal distance among outcomes and put them on an inverse scale from 8 for most valued to 1 for least valued. Do you know what values should go on the question marks here on the slide? Pause the clip and take a minute to check before you continue. Did you indeed have the same value for the question marks on the slide? Then now we have all the information needed for a game tree. We now have developed a complete game tree, or a game theory model in extensive form. Let's analyze our game and see if we can find the Nash equilibrium strategies for the players. In the absence of cooperation and with fully rational players, we would expect players to use this strategy. Computers can help you find it, for instance with Gambit software, but we can also find it ourselves sometimes, using backward induction. The village of Great Brock moves as third and last player. They are the green player in the tree. In the first branch at the top, Great Brock can move to outcome 1 or outcome 2. This gives the village a payoff of 2 in outcome 1 or a payoff of 1 in outcome 2. This is the last payoff in green listed here at the end of the tree. Logically, the village would move to outcome 1. So we can cross away outcome 2. It will not be selected by the village. We can do the same for the other 3 branches where the village controls the last moves to either outcomes 3 or 4, outcomes 5 or 6, or outcomes 7 or 8. Can you see which of these outcomes will be selected and which ones we can cross away? For each of these pair of outcomes, between which Great Brock can choose, look at their payoffs, the last numbers in green at the end of the tree. We can cross away the outcomes with the lower payoffs. For the remaining reduced tree, we can now move to the second to last player, which is the Department of Water Affairs. This player in the top branch chooses between outcome 1 with a payoff of 5, which is the blue payoff in the middle, or outcome 4 with a payoff to Water Affairs of 1.5. As a rational player that seeks to maximize its benefits, its payoffs, the Department of Water Affairs will move to outcome 1. We can cross away outcome 4. In a similar way, outcome 5 is preferred over outcome 8 by the Department of Water Affairs. We now reach the first player, the city of Mossel Bay. Knowing what the other players' moves are and what their preferences are, Muscle Bay knows that essentially it chooses a move either to outcome 1 or to outcome 5. In outcome 1, the payoff to the city is 8. This is the first payoff in red. In outcome 5, the payoff to the city is 4.5. The city will thus move to full claim, resulting in outcome 1. And this leads us, via backward induction, to identify outcome 1 as the Nash equilibrium outcome for this game. The city of Muscle Bay claims its full amount of water, the Department of Water Affairs manages the dam for environmental flows, and the village of Great Bruck restricts its development. We now know what outcome to expect in this non-cooperative game. But is this also socially the best possible outcome? If not, we may want to consider a policy intervention to improve the expected outcome for this situation. 2 social optima have been defined by Pareto and Hicks. Chapter 6 of the book explains both, but we will look at the Hicks optimum here. The Hicks optimum looks at the maximal total value in the game. It simply takes the sum of the payoffs for all players. The outcome or outcomes with the maximum combined payoff is or are Hicks optimal. If we look again at our game tree, we see that for outcome 1, the combined payoff is 8 plus 5 plus 2 is 15. For outcome 2, it is 1 plus 1.5 plus 1 is 3.5, etc. If we do this for all 8 outcomes, we see that the maximum value is 18.5. This is the combined payoff for outcomes 5 and 7, so these are the Hicks optima. In both outcomes, the city of Muscle Bay would only put down a partial claim on the water and the village of Great Bruck would restrict development. In these cases, there is more total value in the game than in the Nash equilibrium outcome. If players can agree on how to redistribute this value and hence start to negotiate and cooperate, all 3 should be able to obtain at least as much or more than in the Nash equilibrium outcome 1. It will, however, require that especially the village of Great Bruck, in this case, gives a convincing and trustworthy signal to the city of Muscle Bay that the village will not opt for unconstrained village development and that the village will distribute some of its value to Muscle Bay to convince the city to opt for a partial claim only. The Department of Water Affairs may be able to mediate or enforce such a redistribution. With this, we conclude this clip. We have constructed and analyzed a game tree for a given problem. The game tree suggests that cooperation could lead to a better outcome, but will benefit from some intervention to persuade the first mover in the game. To be more certain of this policy conclusion, we would also need to analyze the game for a different order of play or even for simultaneous play. You can do this yourself, for instance using Gambit. Hopefully, you now have a good basis to construct and analyze your own game trees. And of course, please also consult the other course resources for further background information. Thank you for watching.